Well, folks, if you found yourself here, it's for one specific reason. Your Blair Chanter is on the fritz. And if you're like me, you've been looking for some clue on how to repair it yourself. Being unable to find anything online, I decided to take it upon myself to figure out a procedure on how to get this thing apart, back together again, and make it like new, and then share that with the world. In my case, the battery would no longer hold a charge after about 3 years and a lot of use. All I really needed was for that one part to be replaced. Sadly, there seems to be no one in the US who works on these things. I made contact with the company and was all set to have it shipped off and be professionally repaired. But when I went to ship it, it seems that Australia has a rule where you can't ship a LiPo battery on an airplane. Not sure how they got it here, but whatever. At that point, I was pretty much left with no other option but trying to fix it myself. I spent quite a bit of time reading forums and watching videos, but was unable to find any relevant documentation on a teardown and repair procedure. So out came the tools. What I ended up needing was an X-Acto knife, a sharp pocket knife, a soldering iron, and a small pair of pliers. And I do have to say, I used a spot welder that is made for joining batteries together to get the connection on the new battery. But there is another option, and we'll get to that. So the first thing I figured out was the chanter comes apart on either side of the decorative ferrule ring. With a firm and very gentle grasp on both sides of the ring, I was slowly able to manipulate the two pieces apart. Once they were barely separated, I saw that there was a very delicate looking ribbon cable connecting the two halves. It was locked down into a receptacle between the body and the bottom section. Now, there are two tabs on either side of the receptacle with locking pins. Hopefully you can see it in this picture. In this shot, one of the pins is up and the other is down. What I did was get an X-Acto knife and very gently popped the pins to the up position. The ribbon instantly came loose and retracted back into the body of the chanter. That's okay. Now that the two halves were separated, the next thing was to get the top cap off. I used a sharp pocket knife and wedged it into the groove between the chanter body and the cap. Gently working it around, I managed to get the cap off without marring the surface. The only thing left to do was separate the two halves, and for that I just used my thumbs and used a little bit more pressure than I preferred, but they came apart without an issue. I clipped the plug off to use on a new and improved battery. By the way, I used electrical tape to isolate the wires of the old battery and recycled it at my local home improvement store. Once the new battery arrived, I spot welded tabs onto the ends, which I could solder the existing JST connector to. The original battery in the Blair comes with a 14500, it's about the size of a AA battery, 800 milliamps, 3.7 volts, LiPo battery. However, when I ordered the replacement, I went with a higher milliamp, 1300 to be exact. So I should get around 35% more use out of a single charge. Now, since you probably don't own a spot welder, another option you can use is to order a battery with these tabs already in place. Check the link below for an example. You'll still need to solder the old JST connectors onto the tabs. Personally, I was unable to locate a battery of this size with the correct connector already in place. The thing you want to avoid is soldering directly onto the ends of a LiPo battery. The heat involved when the soldering directly to the ends greatly degrades the battery. The rest was easy. All that was left to do was to get some heat shrink tubing around the battery, apply some hot glue, set it in place, and plug it in. The rest of the steps were all done in reverse order. I used some small pliers to get the retracted ribbon cable out of the body and back into the receptacle, and then locked it in place with the X-Acto knife. Once the whole thing was reassembled, I was feeling pretty good. Now that I had conquered the world, I had to try it. To my amazement, when I turned it on, it worked! Good as new. I went into this project knowing that I may be developing a very expensive brick. But after everything was said and done, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I will mention that I thrive on fixing things rather than replacing them, and I have a garage full of things to make that happen. I'm glad to say I saved hundreds of dollars and weeks of time. I hope this helps someone out there experiencing the same frustrations I had. Thanks for watching, and happy piping.